chapter discusses what are some of the characteristics of effective public participation. One is that public participation is viewed as the way decision makers get the mandate that they need to act. Two, public participation process is well integrated into decision making process. Three, the interested public is involved in every step of the decision making. And four, programs are targeted to ensure the involvement of all stakeholders who perceive themselves to be affected. And five, multiple techniques are used aimed at different audiences. When issues can be difficult and controversial, effective managers use public participation as a way of getting a mandate on the individual decision or project which they are working. So the author shows us a quote from Peter Johnson, the administrator at the Bonneville Power Administration. In this quote, Mr. Johnson says that conflict is absolutely inevitable. So the only choice is whether to dodge the controversy or to learn how to harness it. He proposes that in the heat of dialogue, planners can consider new ideas and test for new possibilities. So in a way, public participation can be the seed for innovation. Technical decision making or rational planning then is not entirely feasible, because the manager is also responsible for creating a process that results in sufficient acceptance so the decision can be implemented successfully. The public participation process is well integrated into the decision-making process. So again, this is a characteristic of what makes good public participation. Every time that you go to the public, you should know why you're interacting with them at this particular point in the decision-making process. What issues need to be discussed with the public, and what decisions the public comments could have an impact on. Make sure that you are able to answer that question. Public participations should be tied directly to decision making, otherwise the public will sense that participation impacts nothing. They will not want to be involved. 3, the interested public is involved in every step of the decision making. So going back to this idea of like Charles Lyndon and incrementalism, the most important decisions in planning do not happen in one time, right? Instead, there's like numerous, like smaller decisions that are made along the way. For example, decisions are made about how a problem is defined, what alternatives are considered, what evaluation criteria is applied, and what mitigation measures should be utilized. So people concerned about the decision being made are wise enough to know that these are incremental decisions, and that these incremental decisions matter because you need point A to get to point B, and so on. These decisions impact each other. So although decision making tends to be incremental, lasting for months or years, even decades, the closer that you get to a final decision, the more people are likely to get involved. So again, you could have in a public lands master plan having these different windows of community engagement, but it is very likely that after a year and a half of these like different windows of surveys, focus groups, conversations, creation of advisory committees, and so on, there will be people that show up at the end, and they might say that they don't like X, Y, or C. And the closer that we also get to a decision, the more people will be involved in this like voluntary manner without being approached by the state. It is important to educate the public that participating in every stage of engagement, it matters because it can have impact later on. So it's important to engage the public as early as possible in the process. And again, this is how you will know if there's like opposition or not, and if you should change things early on as opposed to be waiting in a public hearing. At that time, it might be late. Next, public participation programs are always involving a subset of the public. So this is very important. There's no possible way that you're going to involve every single resident and every single citizen, even if you send postcards to everyone and ask them to do a survey. A large percentage of the population is not going to participate. It's also important to remember that there is not a single public, but there's like a multitude of interests and groups. So people don't participate unless they perceive that their interests or values are affected. Just to give you an example or the previous example of like the homeless resource centers in Sugar House, people really felt that their values and interests were affected. So of course they're going to come to these meetings. But we can think about different scales of participation. When a disaster strikes, everybody participates in the community. Everybody goes, or at least most people go and pick up the debris. They help others that might need food or might not have some kind of service. So everybody is engaged because everybody together, it is in a moment of crisis, and everybody is affected by it. So that's why you see more participation, more volunteer engagement, and even the creation of more non-profit organizations that come from different neighborhoods and different interests when a disaster strikes, because it really pushes you to be engaged and to be involved, because it affects your whole neighborhood, your whole city, your whole country in many instances. But then after the emergency period of the disaster is gone, so this is the period in where people are receiving food, people are fixing immediately their roofs, they are just checking that older adults are fine and safe. After this, there's the more recovery period in where there will be more like planning, and we are talking about other issues like how to fix or improve the infrastructure. Maybe it's the electrical infrastructure. But again, after people have electricity in their own home, then less people are going to get engaged in like how to prevent a next disaster and power outages in case something happens in the future. Less people are going to be involved in that. Then programs are targeted to ensure the involvement of all stakeholders who perceive themselves to be affected. So people now use the term stakeholder to describe those who choose to be involved themselves into like a planning process, in particular those that are affected and those that have like an interest in participating in whatever process is happening. So the author argues that it's less crucial to have thousands of people engaging in any given planning process, but it's more important to actually find the stakeholders, or the people that have a vested interest, and there are people that represent those like multiple publics. So here you might say, well, one of the stakeholders is this specific group that engages the Latino community, or that specific cultural center that is advancing the rights of like indigenous communities. So those stakeholders are very important to engage, because then they are able to engage the community at large, but also they have a lot of knowledge about what the community needs and wants, and they can communicate that to the planner and the decision maker. But still, it's very important that you do your best to inform everyone of your project, both the general public but also the stakeholders. They need to be given the opportunity to opt in or out of a public participation process. So if people choose not to participate, that's unfortunate, but rarely that is a source of political controversy later on. However, if on the other hand people feel like left out from the beginning, that is like a prescription for future controversy. So the author ends with characteristics of successful projects: a policy committee representing all the key governmental organizations that oversee the process, a technical committee with technical qualified representatives of both agencies and organized groups who work to get agreement of study methodologies, a citizen advisory committee, public workshops for the general public, periodic newsletters to inform anybody who has expressed an interest. So that's why it's so important for if you're administering a survey, on conducting an interview, having someone going to your website to ask them for their email, because they already were interested or they already were informed about what is happening. So the question is like, do you want to stay informed in this process? And a public participation program does not consist on a single activity, so all of these are part of the different things that you need to look at when you create your own planning participation program. And in the next chapter we discuss the pragmatics of actually designing a public participation program with all of these different aspects.